Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Welcome.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're broadcasting from the only place in Decatur where you can make anything from a birdhouse to a photon beam flux capacitor thing. It's the Decatur Makers Hour.
All right, warm welcome, Makers. This is Maureen Haley, member here at Decatur Makers, and we are coming to you live for our first pod stream recording session, live from Decatur Makers in downtown Decatur, Georgia, decaturmakers.org. And we are in our makerspace, so you may hear background saw noises or worse, screams, that sort of thing. So don't be alarmed. So you might hear some background noise. So we're going to get started. Today is Friday, June 22nd, and we are just, there's a group of us getting together to try our first podcast. And what I'm going to do is start out by just going around the table a little bit and have each of us introduce ourselves and talk about your areas of interest and maybe a project that currently is occupying your time and your mind and your life. So shall we go this way?
Sure.
Cool?
Yeah, I'm Kevin Arna. I'm the Makerspace Manager at Decatur Makers. Really kind of a jack of all trades. I kind of work in all the areas of the space. Admittedly, I'm not very good with the silhouette cutter, but everything else I feel pretty comfortable with. Actually, I'm terrible at welding too, now that I'm thinking about it. So one of the projects I'm working on right now is my name tag that I lasered out is not quite flashy enough, so I'm working on a printed circuit board version that'll light up from the back.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it'll be really slick.
Very cool.
Nice.
Are we moving on to the
Yes,
other end of the
let's
couch
go
over here?
around the table.
So this is Erm Diorio. I'm the Executive Director of Decatur Makers. Projects that I'm working on are not nearly as cool as the rest of the folks here today, but I'm working on a paper light-up helicopter for kids and maybe some cool kaleidoscope. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
Areas of interest, I joined Decatur Makers for the wood shop. I've been in several times. Over 4 years, I've made 1.5 projects.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely need to get in there a little bit more.
Yeah.
I just love so many areas here, but really are experienced in none. So I'm in the right place with the right people. Just need to maybe work on some more projects. That's my goal this year.
Yeah, we're still working on figuring out a way to make more time.
Yes.
Let me know
exactly.
how that works out.
That time
I
machine.
need it.
Yeah.
I will say Erm has the most important job. She herds the cats, and we are the cats. She keeps us. She keeps us in line and keeps everything together.
Well, I'll say it's not just me anymore. It's me and Kevin.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's
the two of
really
us
hard
together.
because we're both dog people.
Yeah.
So true. But we love our cats.
And we love you guys. You guys are
Meow.
amazing.
Meow.
My name is Shar Miller King. I am a woodworker. I build whatever I possibly can build. My current project is converting 80-year-old pine into shiplap that was once in a home in Avondale Estates. I have about 100 boards that I've been working on this summer, and I'm about halfway through. Hallelujah.
Amazing.
So it's pretty cool because Kevin showed me how to set up the dado set on the table saw. So now I have a new skill, and more importantly, I teach here, which is awesome because I want to share everything I know with anybody that I can share it with. So happy to be a part of the podcast and be in my second favorite place other than home, which is the makerspace.
Cool.
And we love that you bring your kids here too, by the way.
Yes, so if you hear anyone yell mommy in the background, that will be one of my 4 children.
Well, it could also be somebody cutting off a finger, but
Thanks, Kevin.
That's what I.
not
that's what I
not
yell.
a child. Hopefully, they're with the Legos, if I remember correctly.
What are you doing to the pine boards?
Well, thankfully, the pine is covered with shellac. So it runs across the table saw pretty smoothly, but it's a multi-step process. So the first thing I do is rip the edges. It's a tongue and groove, the original joinery. So I'm ripping the edges on the table saw. Then I take it over to the planer, smooth it out, and then I take it back over to the table saw and put a dado in on both sides. And I'm done. So each board takes me approximately 20 minutes. to make sure that it's straight and smooth and it looks nice. Thankfully, I'm not doing the sanding or the installing, so I feel like I have the easy job. So it's a beautiful home. I can't wait to see it finished.
Very cool. We may have to have a session on woodshop vernacular.
Maybe you could explain for the folks that don't know what a dado is.
Absolutely. I love to.
Oh, that's not a person? No, I'm just
It can
Dado.
be.
Dado's not here?
Not today, but it's a
Not today, though.
It's a Swedish pop band.
K-pop.
No, I don't know what it is. I think it's something about the shape on the edge of the wood.
It is. It's a recessed area at the edge. Now, I honestly get dado and rabbit confused. Kevin can help me because they are essentially the same type of cut, but they're located in different places on a board.
That's very true. A rabbit tends to be on the end of a board, so it's basically almost like a little step down at the end of a board, whereas a dado goes through kind of the middle of the board. So if you were doing something like making shelves or like a set of bookshelves, you might make dados for the shelves to actually slide into, whereas the top piece would sit in a rabbit. So that's one way of thinking about it.
Cool.
Very cool.
We do need to make a game about woodshop vernacular. And every time you say Brad, everybody has to solder something. I don't know.
Says the woman who loves the e-shop.
That's right. You have to leave the wood shop and go into the e-shop.
Well, Maureen, you didn't mention a project that you were working on.
I didn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pick one.
Well,
There's so many.
So I'm Maureen Haley, and I originally went to a meetup for Decatur Makers because I was trying to learn coding, and my areas of interest are everything here. 3D printing and laser cutting, but I really like the microelectronics and making lights blink, making LEDs blink. And one thing that I'm working on right now is and I did this little robot thing called an Auto DIY. You can find autodiy.com online. And we made a little robot that walks. And then there's another edition that you make that has arms. I did that one. And then there's one you can laser cut, make it out of wood. So I made that one. So right now I'm designing one that uses the Adafruit Circuit Playground Express board with the Cricut board. So because we have like 10 of those or something here, so that potentially we could have little robots. And if you were doing a class with the Circuit Playground Express, you could put them in this robot and then code the robot. So I'm just redesigning the head in the Tinkercad or something like that. And trying to,
Awesome.
Turns out there's coding involved, which since 2012, I have not progressed very far in my coding learning. But I may have to actually sit down and do some coding. So that's what I'm working on.
That's amazing. And you make it sound so easy.
You do. And I like you do the collective we, as in you and I.
Yeah.
I just sit there and pat you on the back.
You sent me the link.
There we go.
That's right. No, we had a whole group that day. We garnered interest from Bill and Charles
that's
and
true.
someone else.
Yeah, I think George Lee was into it
Yeah,
too.
George-
Yeah.
That's right.
Otto's
I
got
had fun playing with the motors. You were all about programming, which was great. And then you had to add the lights.
Yes, you gotta have a light. Oh, that's
Whichever
right.
they
Had to
lights.
put the matrix
mouse on,
in.
yeah.
Yes. Oh man, well, that was its own journey. Cool. Well, anything else anyone wants to add about what they're up to? I'm sure we'll get to it soon enough.
Should we maybe just talk about all the areas that we have here at the Makerspace for those listening in, maybe for the first time hearing about Decatur Makers?
Oh, that's good, so that people who are listening can know what's available here. Yeah. You want to start?
Well,
Pick one.
sure.
Till we run out.
We've talked about our wood shop, which is, I'm not the right person to talk to about that. We've got our electronic shop, which I'm not the right person to talk about that either.
Sure you are.
How
Sensing a
about the arts and
theme.
crafts area? We have a sewing area as well. We have a DIY bio lab, 3D printers. We've got a ham radio group. We do coding. We have a laser cutter. Leather working. We've been getting some leather crafting going. Some classes there, and metal shop. I think those might be all the big areas, but you all
Is that it?
We can always add more.
I like how you said that as if you don't have to go down that list 10 times a day for people.
Well, we're 2,500 square feet under one roof, and people don't believe. Like, that's what I find the most when we talk about Decatur Makers and what we have here. That's the reaction is, all of that's under one roof? Really?
2,500 square feet. Is that right? You should say it like, what's the land mass of, like, what's the area of Decatur? You would say it's like several hundred acres under 2,500 square feet. It's a whole community under 2,500.
That's right. That's right.
But, yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. What else? Anything that missed? You guys catch anything?
We do have a screen printing setup, though. It hasn't been very
true.
popular just yet. Got a
A lot of
four-color.
interest.
Yeah.
Anyone out there that knows how to screen print and wants to jump in?
Yeah, please come to Decatur Makers and show us how to do it.
What about the photography studio? I saw someone
That's
discussing
right.
that on Slack, I think.
Hey, that's
there's
right. We
definitely
have
interest.
a video live stream group, and we put some videos up on our YouTube channel too. You mentioned 3D printing, but we also have a 3D scanner that can scan full body humans, or
That's
I guess
right.
other species. But if you can,
If you can get them to stand still.
that's right.
Yeah.
We don't provide sedation services.
We have a lot of doctors, but not a lot of vets in the space.
There you go.
And some of the doctors are the PhD variety, not the MD variety.
Yeah, I stayed at the Holiday Inn.
Right.
If you stay at Holiday Inn, you can scan people. You mentioned the biolab, though, right? I'm sure you did. I was listening.
I did, yep.
Closely.
Our biolab.
Cool.
Yeah, they've done some really
That
cool
looks
stuff, making like planters out of mycelium, which is the actual body of a mushroom. The mushroom part's actually just the fruiting body. That's basically the seeds of a mushroom. So they made these biodegradable planters that they could then plant something in, and when the roots got too big, they could just bury the whole thing in their yard, and it would decompose on its own.
It's amazing.
Did you do that? I did that class.
I didn't, but I was around at the time, and I watched
I know
and
he's
kind
got
of
a
lurked
couple.
in the background. But yeah,
I had this great idea that I was going to use that material and make sandal bottoms out of the mycelium.
That's a great idea.
I know it would be biodegradable, but it's sturdy and it'd be
And?
very earthy. I just, it's
Oh,
on the
let's
list
do
of
that.
things to do.
You
we
should
could
do
totally
it.
do that.
We should.
yeah. Now, athlete's foot is a fungus, right? Just checking.
Just
Different kind of fungus, though. I assume.
Well, I like to wear black socks with my sandals, so it's not going to really be. No, I'm just
Problem
joking.
solved.
Yeah, exactly. You always thought that was silly looking, but really, it's
functional.
preventative medicine.
Not
Yeah.
here at the Makerspace. It fits right in.
That's
Let's talk about the band. What was the band? What was going to hold the foot onto the mycelium? Have you thought about that? Should we talk
no,
about it?
but I suspect it would have been 3D printed in a flexible filament
Obviously.
or something more biodegradable.
See, I would have guessed duct tape since it's
Duct
a makerspace.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe one of those flowery, the duct tapes come
Oh,
in
yeah,
all
the
kinds
nice
of
patterns.
We'd make pretty pattern out of multi
duct tape.
types of duct tape. Yeah.
That's right. Guyver that thing on your foot, you'll be fine. You wouldn't even put it between your toes. You just wrap it around the sole of your foot. Tape. One-time use. All right.
I really think we should do this. Maybe that's another podcast
I
idea.
think that
you
was
know?
that was one of my brilliant ideas that I've been afflicted with forever.
You usually follow through on your ideas.
I do some of them until I get frustrated. Yeah. So, was there anything else, you guys? Because I have some stuff I was gonna. I
Do you
was
want
just
to jump
gonna
into some stuff. I was going to
play
say.
up. Oh, what? Go ahead.
I was going to say you mentioned frustration. I mean, that's something that happens here a lot,
A whole lot.
right?
Yep.
It's kind of my part of the maker way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
It's
if we
true.
want to mention projects that have been frustrating.
Yes, absolutely. I know we're not allowed to use certain words on this podcast,
We
but
are family friendly.
I will admit that I have said a couple under my breath on
Yeah.
the last project that I did, a rustic cake stand. Was my first epoxy pour. This cake stand incorporated all types of wood and weird joinery and epoxy resin, and it went horribly wrong to the point where it started bubbling over. and hardening immediately. And I think it takes like a day, 24 hours for it to harden technically, and mine's hardened in about 3 minutes.
Oh no.
I was pretty sure that wasn't right. So I
fail.
proceeded to try and scrape it out with a plastic knife because that was the only thing I had handy.
A plastic.
And,
Well, the plastic doesn't mar the wood, of course. I'm
right.
sure that's why. right?
Obvious choice.
Or the resin, probably.
Right. Or the didn't even touch the resin. So I cried for a little bit, considering calling my client and telling them that I could not complete their project, that it was a total disaster. And it's right when you get to that point where you feel like you want to give up and you want to quit, and you say, you know what, this is not working out, that you take a step back and you say, you know what, I'm going to finish this. I'm a maker. Maker's going to make. I got this. And then all of a sudden the sky opens up, the sun shines down. You're like, I'll just start over from scratch. Like the last week never happened.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't been working on it at all. And it turned out great. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm Wooden Maven. I do post some pictures sometime when I get a chance in video.
yeah.
So I'll post some pictures of that fail. And I'm not afraid to admit failure, because we can all say that some of the best ideas
Come from failures.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly. And that just helps you with your perseverance and really shows what you're made of. Are you the kind of person that caves in when things get bad, or are you the kind of person that just powers through?
Become a problem solver.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Well
such
done.
a positive way of looking at it. I see it as like whenever I get stuck and I feel like I've ruined a project, I'm like, well, I can't make it any worse, so I guess I'll just try this crazy thing.
And crazy usually
Sometimes
works.
it works out.
Yep.
Yeah. But I did want to mention something about the resin, because a lot of people don't realize that resin actually accelerates how fast it cures if it's hot. And so when that resin is curing, if you got a lot of it, it's heating all the other resin up, curing it faster, and then it cures much faster than you expect. So that's probably what was happening with yours.
Interesting. And I also found out afterwards that you're only supposed to pour about 1/4 inch at a time, not 2 inches.
Right.
So I think that's another thing to keep in mind for people who are interested in doing pours, is that you only pour a small amount at a time and allow that to cure. I think is like 24 hours.
Something like that. It depends on the resin, though.
Is resin fluid?
Yes.
You don't heat it up to melt it down?
You don't heat it up to melt it down. The only time that you apply heat to it is to remove the bubbles that form from mixing the epoxy and the resin. It's a two-part
A
material.
resin and a hardener.
Yeah. And
Little
you use
chemical
a heat gun-
reactions going on?
Chemical reaction.
Cool.
And
And it comes
then-
in colors, you said, too?
And it's clear, and then you can add powdered mica to it to add color to it.
Nice.
And you hit it with a heat gun, which we have here in our e-shop, to remove the bubbles, or blowtorch if you're outside safely. I think do we have a blowtorch in
Oh,
the?
yeah, lots of blowtorches.
Oh, yes.
Now, whether we
Ooh,
have any
blowtorches.
propane to go in them is another story, but we definitely have them.
We can get some.
That's true.
Yes, we can do an epoxy
Right.
pour class
Let's do
because
it.
that's the hot thing right now.
It is.
I'm so
right.
into it.
Yeah.
Because you can sand it, you can carve it, you can mold it into all different kinds of shapes, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You can make jewelry,
Yep.
Get that on
pour it
the
into
class
wood.
list.
Yeah. I'm excited.
It's a big ticket item.
You can
out
add
there.
LEDs to it, Maureen.
You can.
Oh,
Yes.
I-
Light it up.
I saw pictures of Char's table.
And that's on your
She had
Instagram?
lights.
I'm going to add it today, I think.
All right.
Based on
Yeah, check
based on
that
this,
out.
because people will say there was nothing on her Instagram page about this.
Yeah, but that really is the hot thing. So,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's cool, too.
Yes, that's why. Yes, I agree.
Well, and did you all hear that apparently river table is the like epoxy resin in between two pieces of live edge wood? That's actually a trademark term, and the guy has
river
been going
tables?
after folks.
No way.
Yeah.
He calls
Yeah.
it the what? The river table?
Yeah, river table. But
Ah.
Char's, though, we've already dubbed the Class 5 Rapids.
all right, yeah, I don't think that counts under the trademark act
Rapids
of
table.
whatever. Yeah.
Well, good luck, because there's a million people out there already making river tables.
Yeah.
TM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll have to name it something else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the class
We'll
5
call it,
rapid.
call it a stream table.
Crick.
Right?
That's
A
right.
crick.
Crick
Crick
table.
Yeah, that works.
How about you? Have you had any disasters that you had to
I think I probably repressed them. Off the top of my head, disasters. I think maybe I'm just tiptoeing a little bit too much in my projects, you know? Maybe I just need to push myself. Try something a little harder. See what happens. I guess I'll talk a little bit. Oh, we can talk about a project we did with the City of Decatur. Their strategic planning group came through and had some sticky notes that were representative of an idea they had to share their strategic plan with within the government. And they want it to be interactive. So you were part of this project, Maureen, so you know exactly where we're going, right? I'm not sure if everyone modge-podged or not, but it was an arts and crafts fail. And so we had to design around their idea of an open box that would hold 64 cubes, and on the front side of the cubes were all the different pieces that made up their logo. So if it was all sitting in the box, you could see their logo. If you pulled a block out, on the back of the cube was a question, and then on the back of the box was the answer to those questions. So these cubes were sent out to all different groups within the city government, and they had to collect them, kind of a search and rescue kind of thing, and they came together and put all the cubes together, and then as a team they finished this project. So we had to build the box, we had to design the back end to have it sit up on a table, it had to be light enough so that it could be brought onto a plane. So we had all these parameters that we had to follow. So the biggest struggle was building these cubes. Like, what material do we use to make these cubes light, and adding all this art onto it? So of course we thought Mod Podge, right? We have
I always
we have
think
material.
That now.
I know
That's
you
the
do.
first thing I think of, and then
This has been
eliminate.
3 years, and we're still talking about these cubes. So
it
was
took about 3 years to make.
it did. We had a lot of help too. So the fail was that we didn't seal the cubes Mod Podge well enough. The back of the cubes had magnets to hold them into the box. And so the magnets were holding them so nice and snugly that the Mod Podge actually sealed together. So you couldn't pull the cubes out anymore once it was put together. Yeah, we fixed it. We made it bigger and better, and there you go.
I remember you doing that project, and every time I would come to the makerspace,
I was trying to
be
get you to
sitting over
come
there,
Mod
podging those cubes.
64 cubes.
That was such a lesson in perseverance for me. It's like, note to self: do not mess with her. She will complete a project.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Oh, cool. Kevin, any marvelous fails?
Marvelous fails. Oh, let's see. I feel like I've been making a lot of shop projects recently that haven't necessarily failed in the execution, more failed as in, the pipe clamp storage isn't used by people for the pipe clamps or things like that. That kind of stuff. I think the most recent fail that I had was that I was working on these party platters for our improv fundraiser out of walnut. And so I decided to laser out a template and use a router to basically trace around the template, but with a big cutting tool. And as I was going around one corner, it splintered. And so a big section of it just came all the way off. And I was like, well, this is not having a good time here.
The wood splintered.
Yeah, the wood splintered. So a big section just sheared off of the main wood.
Shearing doesn't sound good.
No, it's not.
Good work.
Yeah, I fixed it. What I did was I used some tricks that I found on YouTube where I just basically planed down it to a flat surface and basically glued another piece of wood on, so it kind of looked like it was still just one piece. And then I did it again. And for some reason this time it worked. I also used a sharper router bit than the second time around.
We learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And by the way, they came out awesome. And I knew there was a certain point where Kevin was frustrated because I got an email, I think, late at night. Shar, I don't know about me.
Not sure they're going to happen in time.
But he did it, and they were great.
Well,
they were amazing.
They
Thank
did.
you.
They were really cool looking.
They did look a little bit like the Scream mask from the Scream movies, mixed with Alien. Like it had a kind of a bigger head. They were amusing looking.
They just added a little je ne sais quoi.
Right. Well, people weren't supposed to hold them in that orientation anyway, so hopefully they just won't notice.
I don't know, it's just kind of bonus, a plus.
Yeah, I guess so. I should have used some resin to give it some some
more
bright
character.
green streaks or something like that.
Well, good news. I think we're going to do Make It Up again, right?
Absolutely. So
There's-
for those who aren't familiar with Make It Up, that was our first hoping to be annual improv show fundraiser, which was a huge success this year.
It was amazing.
Lots of great improvisers from the Atlanta area came out, had us laughing. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. I don't know about you guys.
I was crying when I was supposed to videotape Shar because I can't work an iPhone's video camera, apparently.
I was actually shocked by that.
I was trying to express my inability to do that.
I said, "No, Maureen, I believe in you.
You're
You
like,
can
it's an iPhone.
just
I was like,
press this-
exactly.
just press this red
Just
button."
press this red button.
I think you had pressed it when you handed it to me. That's what I think went on. Or I bumped it. I don't know. But anyway, I didn't get you videoed. Fortunately, your friend did.
Someone did.
So Shar was
Some-
up on stage sharing a fail or a story.
Yeah.
What-
It
what
seems
did you
to be
talk
a lot
about?
of failure going on here.
This is like a failure support community.
I know.
We should have a group.
You let
support
me
group.
be the teacher. All my stories about failure. Yeah, I don't mind sharing, because people think that you have to be perfect out the gate when you're working on a project. Because sometimes we don't see the backstory. We just see finished, beautiful pictures on social media and our friends bragging about them, and we don't know that it took them 6 months to do it, or they had to Mod Podge 64 cubes together, and they wanted to just rip them apart. But I don't mind sharing those stories, because I'm still here. I don't quit. You just keep going until
Keep
you
learning.
get it right. And then there's also wood filler to hide all the mistakes.
That's right. That's right.
The tricks of the trade.
Exactly.
We learn them here.
And nobody knows, right?
Exactly.
Wink, wink.
Well, on those same things, I did try wood filler for walnut, and it did not match the walnut at all. So I ended up having to sand that back out. Yeah.
Good to know.
There's also that sawdust and glue trick to make your own wood filler.
Oh, I did hear about that. Did you share that? Or did
I
you
don't
learn
know.
that? Did you learn that here?
I probably figured it out by mistake on a project that I
Probably
messed up.
invented it. I think you invented it.
I'm just going to coin everything
That's right.
today.
The crick table and the or the rapids table.
We need a name for the sawdust and glue.
Make it till you make it.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I've heard that one though. Well, I had a fail. Erm asked me to 3D print this little thing for the Nation of Makers. What would you call that?
It was a puzzle
Logo
piece to their logo.
piece.
They were asking. It was a communal art piece.
And I was determined to put LEDs in it. So then I had seen something online where someone had made these little, they randomly played the Rickroll song and was attached to a little battery.
Oh, Rick Astley. Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah. Rickroll. What is it? Never gonna give you. Anyway, so it would randomly play it, and then they would throw it in places where people couldn't find it, and so it would just drive people crazy because it would randomly come on. And the way they did it was they attached a battery to a little microprocessor board that would play it, and then it would go down and be very, very low power, so it would last. I think they said it's supposed to last 3 years or something like that.
Wow.
If it's not discovered by then, or the building is not imploded because nobody can. Anyway, I wanted to use that project and make a little light that beeped, that blinked randomly, but so that you could embed it in a 3D print. And it would last for a long time, so at least over the weekend. But I couldn't get to work, and I was leaving on Monday, and every time I would try something, it wouldn't work, and I'd give up, and then I'd go back and try something else. It would work, and I'd be like, I don't have time for this. Now it's working. I have to try something else. And then I was literally, the lift car was outside. I was like drying the last bit of clothes I was throwing in my suitcase that I'd washed that morning, and it started working. And I've sent a video to Erm, and she texted me and she goes, "Are you actually in your laundry room videoing this?" And I was like, "Yes, it's working. I'm gonna leave it on my porch and go to the airport now." But it didn't work.
Well, it did work. I came and picked it up, and I
Yeah.
sent you a picture because it was still working a couple
Yeah.
hours later. I was thrilled.
Was it randomly lighting? I couldn't tell.
Yes,
it
was
just lit?
randomly lighting.
Oh, it was working for a while.
It was working for a while, and then it sat in my car for a day, and then when I brought it into the makerspace to
Yeah.
attach that piece to the rest of this part that was like a foot wide and maybe 6 inches tall,
Yeah.
um,
Then it quit.
it quit. And then we tried. A couple of the folks here gave it a good try, but we needed
Yeah.
you, Maureen.
I think the light probably used more power than just the little Rick Astley beeper tone, so it probably ran the batteries.
Well, the
down
batteries,
faster.
yeah, they wore down.
Yeah.
We did check that.
So that's the
Next time. Next
it-
project.
It's on the list of things to complete. Right after all the other 100 things.
Well, I've noticed the list never gets shorter because, as soon as you finish a project, it's like, well, now I could do that one better. So let's add it to the bottom of the list again.
Or as Maureen would do, she'll start in the wood shop, then add lights, and then she'll have to 3D print something to it because that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be
The
augmented.
feature creep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Then engrave it with a logo. Yeah. Cool. Is that it? Everybody's shared we've all claimed our failure card. Is that right?
At least
Our
one.
badges.
One failure.
One of the topics that I had written down to talk about, because the people that I've randomly talked about this with seem to have the same take I do. Well, we're a makerspace, and we participate in Maker Fair, and then this week, people who are in the maker community. Well, ironically, you guys were at the Nation of Makers conference. Then this Make magazine just reported that they're gonna close. They laid off all their employees, and so Make magazine's gonna fold. And there were some articles online was like it's tragedy for the maker movement, and I was like, this is written by someone not in the maker movement, because I don't know. I'm just curious. Did you guys hear about that, or have you read anything about it? And if you had any thoughts on it, did you guys read anything about it?
Yeah,
I read an article.
we definitely had. There were some discussions at the Nation of Makers conference, but
Oh,
it
cool.
didn't like take over the conference.
Good.
Majority of it was all positive and constructive. So the Make Media, which is the organization that does produce or publish the Make magazine, and also they franchise the name of Maker Fair, has closed its doors, but the understanding is that they're restructuring. So they went bankrupt, but they're looking to see if they can, what's going to be next. So that's the gist of what's going on with them. But it doesn't necessarily, I don't see it affecting us in terms of those that are makers and making things, because as long as there's people, there's going to be makers. There's going to always be problems to solve and things to build and things to learn. So I don't necessarily see it as a tragedy. If you really loved Make Magazine, then maybe a few tears were certainly shed, because they did share a lot of great stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know if, Kevin, you have some thoughts on that as well.
Well, it's a hard business to be in, especially given that so many folks are basically giving away the same content these days. You can go on YouTube and learn anything that you could have learned in a Make magazine. Make magazine really did a professional job of it, but it's just really hard to compete with free. There's Inventables, Instructables, sorry, where you can get all kinds of, learn how to do anything. There's Hackaday if you're into electronics. There are all kinds of places where you can now get pretty deep into any area of making without having to pay a cent, which could be good, could be bad. Certainly good for getting folks into it, but that curation aspect is certainly missing a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they did an amazing job in terms of branding the whole Maker Fair concept and taking that around the world. So that's pretty spectacular. I think there's lots of different opportunities to take that idea and maybe repackage it or rehouse it. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was surprised that there was someone's even printing a magazine, because people just don't buy magazines like they used to, paper magazines. And they do have an online presence, and they have a video presence, and they have some educational stuff too, I think. So to me, the only surprise by that was that whether the magazines survived was the determination of whether Make folded or whether they went under or not. And the article that I read said that they're looking for support to keep their online presence available, and I guess they make money from franchising something for maker fairs. I don't know.
Yeah, the trademark. So it's come full circle to the trademark thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just have the Maker Faire trademark locked down, so nobody else can use that name for a maker. Well, that's almost a genericized thing. Like, it is a Maker Faire, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll find a way to rebound. I'm confident of that. They just have to keep up with the times, like you said. I can believe they were still printing magazines either, but they will rebound, I'm sure.
I saw a tweet from the guy the Oculus guy, Lucky Palmer Lucky is his name, that he was interested in supporting them. So I don't know if he really is going to support them, but that there's a lot of money in tech, and so some of that might come out of the woodwork and help with whatever they need. I think they do. Sounds like they do need to restructure if they're not going to print the magazine.
Mm-hmm.
well, they started as a venture capital funded business, so they are kind of expected to make lots and lots of money or nothing, and they kind of went the middle of the road, which is not what you expect a startup to do. And so they probably lost a lot of their funding because they weren't looking for those venture capitalists weren't looking for a lifestyle business. They were looking for Facebook or something like that.
Make money on.
Yeah. So I could see how that would make things kind of tricky with finances. So.
I think it could be really good for the maker movement, and here's why.
Let us know what you're thinking, Maureen.
Because they're sort of attributed the term make or makers, right? And there's no harder term to define. If you've ever tried to, what is a maker? Or a lot of people say, what goes on over there? And it's really hard to say. So maybe, but you can't abandon it because it's sort of like, it's started that way. So maybe there'll be a better term come up if there's not a magazine calling it make.
Well, and I think some folks are really into having the title as maker. And then there are other folks who just want to make stuff. And I think those are not necessarily totally overlapping. Personally, I just want to make stuff. You can call me what you want. But I'm going to keep making stuff regardless.
Yeah. I like our community here, though, and we're a maker space. So, yeah, that requires some fancy word work.
Right. It's definitely how we get found, for sure. Like that's the search term.
But I'd say that everyone here is an artist as well. Like, I feel like those two are interchangeable, maker, artist.
Hashtag everyone's an artist now.
No labels.
Mine is
That's true
mine
too.
is hashtag me make too. Did you see that? That's women in making.
No, I need that one, though.
I put it in one of my emails.
I
As
do
a
like
joke.
that. I do like that.
Me make too. Like me too. Just for our listeners who might not be familiar with that. It's a visual.
Well, hashtag everyone is a maker for
Yeah.
sure. Let's go back to that one. No labels.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, Make, we hardly knew you. I'm sure they'll be
Make
back.
will be back.
We'll be
Maker
back.
Media. Maker Media.
I don't think we're in denial. I think they'll be back. Anything else on your minds? Because I have lots of stuff we can go over.
Well, let's go.
Yeah.
You want to go?
let's do
You want to play
lots
the
of stuff.
game?
I want to play the game.
Let's do the game.
All right, we're going to play the game. This is Decatur Makers. Guess the maker word. Oh, yeah. Maybe we can't use maker anymore.
We'll allow it.
GM. So the way we play is I'll start. Pick up a card and it has something written on it. And then
I feel like you just looked at the card.
I feel like
Are
I
you
did
going to
too.
be the first victim?
I just want to. Was someone else? Well, I'll pass it to Kevin. Kevin can be the first victim. Take the top card, and then the rest of us. He can't look at the card. He's holding it up on his forehead, and then the rest of us are going to try to get him to guess whatever's on the card. It may not be a word, maybe a phrase.
Can we tell them what it is? Like
You
the
have to
type
say it
of
without
word or phrase?
You can say anything, but you can't use the words on the card.
Okay.
You can use some sounds. You can use animal noises.
Oh.
Animal noises. Okay.
Okay.
So if
All
you
right.
tell me it's upside down, I'm going to have trouble figuring out what tool is upside down.
Oh, that's right.
If the words are
It's upside down.
It's
It's upside down.
It's
You gotta
upside
turn
down?
it over.
It's upside
Let's see,
down.
what's upside down? Beehives. No.
Okay. What do you guys
This
think?
is something that Bill Sandage does
Yeah,
a good
Bill.
bit of.
This is,
Soldering.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, and it's
if he's involved in your project, be careful.
it doesn't just start with one idea, or it starts with one idea.
Oh, this is feature creep.
It's true.
Feature creep. All right. Yeah.
That's good. All
right.
right. Feature creep.
That's a joke around the space. We like to add, well, at least we like to add LEDs to everything.
We do.
I think we might have to define feature creep for folks because
Yeah, I
that's
I think
not really
so.
a term.
I'm not
that-
sure I know what that one is.
Ah, what do you think it might mean?
Sounds scary.
It's
It
not
totally
just.
is.
It's not just what we call Bill or anything.
What I
like that.
It can be
And
scary if
he's
there's a
not
deadline.
the feature creep.
It's
what
not
I
a
think
noun.
of when I hear the word creep.
Yeah, that's not Bill Sandage.
Is that not how you spell creep? Is it C-R-E-A?
No, that's right.
It's
That's
okay.
right. If you switch the
It's just
P
a
and the
different
E, you
kind
get
of creep.
crepe.
That's right. It's creeping features. Maybe we
Or
should
not a
put that.
creepy kind of person?
It's when like you want to make a sign on the CNC machine, and a year later it has offset letters and LEDs routed into the back.
And it's grown in size.
It's
and painted
programmable.
10 different colors.
Yes.
And
And it's got a scrolling like text bar at the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
claps when you walk in the door.
Has more and more features or elements. My friends do graphic design. It's got like 20 elements.
Oh, yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good way of describing it.
It always starts with like, you know what would make this really cool?
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody's like, yeah, you do that.
Now, sometimes those idea generating sessions are good,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It can be, yeah.
It's made for some amazing stuff.
Exactly.
Finished the night before or the morning of. It's due time.
Yeah.
Which is perfect. Sometimes there's just not anything on TV. So,
There used to be. Now
Stay
there's
up all
always
night.
something on.
Yeah.
Making is the entertainment.
yeah.
And I found out that there are people here really late. I was here till about midnight one night, and I couldn't believe how many other people were here.
People come in at 2 in the morning. Who
Yeah,
are
I'm
these people?
surprised. And I'm thinking this. They're probably thinking, "Why is she here? Doesn't she have kids? Where are her kids?"
Came here late. She was here all night.
They're sleeping upstairs.
Yeah, right. We have cots in the back.
All right. Who wants to? Someone want to do another card?
Sure.
All right, so arms up.
Arms up, and you're upside down.
Oh, this is my favorite thing
Know what it is?
in the
It's
world.
Shor's favorite thing. What could it be?
Woodworking?
No,
You
resin.
know it.
Resin is at the bottom of that list.
It's associated
I-
with laser cutting.
Oh yeah,
Laser cutting. I made a
Laser
notebook that has
It's a
this.
A
special.
living hinge.
Yes,
living
hinge.
Ooh, another
Yes.
good vocabulary word here. Living
Yeah,
hinge.
I think I spelled it right. I didn't even look at that.
So can I tell everyone what a living hinge is?
Yeah.
Please do.
So the Glow Forge,
Share
which,
the glories of a living hinge.
which
with
is why
us.
most people join the space, right? Besides the wood shop.
is.
The wood shop for the
living
laser.
hinge.
For living hinges, it is when you take a piece of wood, preferably a very thin piece of plywood, and make very small cuts in the wood so that the wood will bend without breaking. So as a gift, I made a bunch of living hinge notebooks, which functionality, I don't know long term what it is, but it looks cool because
does look
how,
cool.
how did you do that? Glow Forge. So
Yeah.
that's what a living hinge is. Also on my Instagram page.
What was your Instagram address again?
Wooden Maven. That's WOODEN MAVEN. You can't miss me. And I'm wearing my Decatur Maker shirt
All right.
on my blue shirt.
Yeah.
My like
Excellent.
only T-shirt that I have.
We got more sitting over here.
Oh yeah,
Blue one.
that one's pretty tattered by now.
Well, and you
Take as
know,
many as you like.
living hinges actually started in like plastic manufacturing and injection molded parts. So like if you've had
Really?
like a floss tin, how it's one piece of plastic, but it hinges open. So that little hinge part is also a living hinge.
Nice,
But they
Ooh,
definitely were
history moment.
popularized by the laser. Way cooler looking than
of
Yeah.
course.
a floss tin.
I just saw a video of someone 3D printed a living hinge.
Oh yeah, I think I saw.
Yeah,
I haven't
put
watched
on
it yet.
Slack channel.
But
You add that to your to-do list.
That's right.
That's next.
When you're in line waiting impatiently, you can always check the Slack channel.
Should we talk a little bit about the Glow Forge? Not sure if everyone knows what that
Yeah,
might be,
definitely.
right?
Since it's
So
our-
it's our laser cutter, which again,
don't talk about it very loudly because it's very sensitive.
it is pretty sensitive.
well, it gets worked a lot, so
It does. It's a
it may not want
workhorse.
more people jumping on it. I don't know.
It's a so many watt. How many watts watts is it? 50?
It's 45 watt.
45?
Yeah.
45 to 45 watts.
Yeah, and it's a CO2 laser, and it can cut through like 1/4-inch plywood, 1/4-inch acrylic. Do not do 1/4-inch PVC. That's a good way to kill everybody in the space.
Oh, no.
Why is that, Kevin?
Well, that C
That's
stands
how
for
to do it.
chloride, and so it
Ooh.
releases this delightful chlorine
chloride.
gas.
Is that
Which-
mustard gas?
Yeah, it's
They use that
that.
in World War One.
Yeah, we're not into World War One weaponry
Yet.
in the space. We tend to stick to the Middle Ages. Not,
Catapults and
yeah, catapults,
trebuchets.
trebuchets.
Yeah, yeah.
and a at least one ballista. Yeah,
And a potato shooter or something like that.
yeah.
Or was it a hamburger? I forget what he was shooting.
it was a hamburger.
It was a hamburger. An air gun that shot hamburgers.
Yes.
You teach the class, right, Kevin?
I do
The
teach
laser
it.
cutter?
It's a very user-friendly laser. So that means people can really kind of focus on learning how to do the design aspect of things rather than figuring out how to get the laser to actually cut what they wanted to cut. Because the design is a lot harder. So something like Inkscape, which makes vector art, or Adobe Illustrator, if you're Mr. Moneybags over there. But yeah, so the design part is really hard, and it's nice that this particular laser gets you up to speed a lot faster on the laser part. So you can focus on the cool part.
But you've done design easy enough for even kids to design stuff.
That's true. They have been things like if you're doing something like engraving a name tag or making a luggage tag, those are all really easy things to do. But if you're trying to get, well, easy in the scheme of things, they're easy for me, but I've done it for a while. Not easy for everybody. But if you are trying to, say, design a box so that pieces fit together perfectly, that is a little bit more challenging to design for. But yeah, it's a wonderful tool. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to do a little bit more on that. I'm adding that to the list.
Oh, no, these are good.
well,
Yeah.
eventually it becomes just a tool that you just reach for. Like I needed to make our quick release vise broke, so somebody messed up. Well, somebody broke the spring on the quick release vise, so it became kind of the opposite of quick release, in that it just slid in and out all the time and didn't actually latch. So I decided to just make it a normal vise by wedging that piece up in there, and I just laser cut it on the laser cutter. I just designed a little piece to fit in that area. And now we have a normal vise that at least works, but does not quick release.
Mm.
Handy. Those kinds of
Where is
fixes
that-
happen
the-
here.
This is the vise on the laser cutter vent? Is that what you're talking about?
This is the vise in the wood shop.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
thought you were going on meta, like you laser cut the laser cutter vise.
Well, I did laser cut the frame
did.
that holds like the limit switch for the
That's
safety
right. That's
interlock.
right. Okay.
But
I was wondering what happened to the vise.
so now it actually works where you don't have to hold the thing up to get it to tighten, which
Ah.
is really a pain.
Has been repaired.
Yep.
I just accept the broken things here, just roll with it. But thank you for fixing it.
I do my best to fix them when I can, or at least grumble about it if I
Right.
can't.
People putting bandsaw blades on upside down.
Oh yeah, that was a wonderful one. It's great. We love it when people try to help. We wish that they would read the manual or watch a video or look at the blade before they took the other one off to see which way the teeth are going. So somebody put the bandsaw blade on
I am
upside
so
down.
glad that was not me. Because the reason is, I only think I know which one is the bandsaw. And I could easily have tried to fix it and done it wrong. But I've heard more than one person mention that as there was someone brought a bandsaw blade in the other night, and they were like, "Oh yeah, someone put the bandsaw blade on backwards." And I was like, that poor person.
Well, that's not even my favorite tool mishap in the wood shop.
Oh, no.
My
Oh, no.
favorite.
But you hear about them all, so
Oh yeah, I ended up having to
You're-
fix a lot of them.
your perspective might be skewed because you hear about all the worst.
Right, that's
So
true.
what is the worst?
So-
Just for our
My
listeners.
favorite one to talk about was the nail gun. So
Okay, I didn't do that. Neither.
somebody jammed the nail gun, which happens. I mean, nail guns just jam from time to time. They get dust in them, so yeah, that's not a problem. Not a problem at all. And they tried to help. They tried to take the little plate off the front, which is great. We love it when people try to help. So they took 2 of the screws and threw them away. I don't know where those screws
You
went.
might have dropped them on the floor.
They might have, but they.
They'll never
We
be
couldn't
seen
find
again. Yeah.
And then the 3rd screw, they said, this has a hexagonal hole, but it'd be a lot cooler if it was a totally round hole. And so they just
forced a different screw.
they completely stripped it, so that I had to take a Dremel and cut a little slot in it, so that I could use a flathead screwdriver to get that out of there. But
we should really write these stories down.
I know.
Just think of all the ones that we're missing.
Think you gotta have
that we
pictures with
have.
it.
Yeah,
I know,
Yeah, I'll
right?
have to-
And
I'm not
Kevin
quite
like
sure.
face palming, like I can't believe they did that. But to me, the coolest thing is it's not about what you can make; it's how you fix something when something breaks.
Yeah.
Because not everyone would
true.
have thought to do that. I would have been like, Kevin, this is broke. Like I don't know that I would have tried.
We
to
need
fix
a
it,
new
you know?
one of these.
Yeah.
Well, we tried screwish doctors at first, and then Chris Good was helping me out with this a little bit too. Like he went and found replacement screws for us. So we tried a couple of things. I'm just telling you how it worked.
How it went down.
Yeah.
Well, can I just take a little poll here in our little group? Who is the manual reader and who is the one that opens the thing and just tries to play around and figure it out?
I'm a manual reader.
I wing it.
I wing it.
That's my story of my life.
I'm 50-50. Earlier on, I was very much a non-manual reader. But now I know when I don't know what's going on, and I say I could hurt myself with that, so I'm going to... Let's go to the manual.
You've been raised right, Kevin.
I was using the clippers on my dog today. At some point, I decided to buy one of those shaver things.
Oh, no.
Which,
How did it go?
well, the last time I used it, she had a big stripe down her back.
Oh no.
And I took her to the groomer and I said, cut it about that high. It was bad last time, but I've been watching videos on YouTube, so I'm kind of an expert now. But
Making the hairdos.
Now, I noticed you didn't say you went to the manual, though.
I'm getting to that.
All right.
I found that I still had the manual in there. And I took it out and I was like, okay, I'm going to read how to do it this time. And I read it and I was very annoyed that it did not tell you how to groom a dog. It suddenly told you like care of the equipment, and I was like, well, this doesn't do me any good. Because
Yeah, it says things like don't take a bath with this clipper.
it, did,
or,
I don't,
you know,
it probably
that-
said that. I didn't read that part.
All right.
I didn't read
Skip
the
the
warnings.
hazard safety stuff,
The
right?
they're all the same.
Well,
I
you know,
wasn't gonna
You might
take
want
a
to get a
bath.
shower and a shave at the same time, right?
Get the dog in the shower.
If the dog's going to be frustrated, might as well have it just be once.
Close the door so the dog can't escape.
That's a good one.
But anyway, I was just saying, I was like, I'm going to read how to do it this time. And it didn't tell me how to do it. But I know how to change the blade.
And you know how to use the cutter now too? Dilly's looking
My
pretty
dog
good.
has a little trimming done. She sure does. Not all over. But I'm happy with it.
That's important.
Now, should we ask what parts were
What a
missed?
treat. Most of the parts were missed. Just the area that she tends to get dirty.
Ah,
She's a furry little thing.
She's so cute though.
Yeah, but I was like, I have that clipper. I'm going to use it. She doesn't really need completely groomed yet. And it took many treats. But I did. I'm just saying, we were talking about manuals, and somehow I've gotten off onto discussions about Dilly.
Well, your maker ways are carried over into other
That's
parts of your
right.
life. You know,
That's
we
right.
talk about that. The benefits of making
That's right.
gives you confidence.
That's right.
Try new things.
Yeah. So I'm a manual reader, but they don't always help.
Agreed. Should we continue the
What else
game?
is going on? Oh,
have
yeah.
it?
Yeah. Whose turn is it? Would you like
think
to
it's
do
Charlotte's
it, Char?
turn.
Yeah,
As
I
long
think
as it's
ours.
not an inside joke.
Oh, up. Okay.
it's not an
You
inside
should
joke.
get this
upside
one.
down?
No,
No, it's not
you're
upside
good.
down.
You're
You
This
got
is
straight.
a little
You're straight.
phrase that woodworkers use sometimes.
right. That has to do with.
This is in your wheelhouse.
Trying to-
Wheelhouse is not one of
This is kind of like a mantra.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a.
Having,
This is a
Is it a
safety.
curse word?
it's not.
No,
not
it's a
curse word.
phrase. It's a phrase. Like,
Maker's gonna make.
no,
Measure,
quite.
measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, we were not much help there, but you still got it.
That's all I learned about woodworking.
Well, I always tell the students taking Woodshop 101, I say, I'm going to tell you the rule, but I'll tell you the secret. If you make a wrong cut, you get scrap wood, and that's how you get better projects. It's from scrap wood. You know, the best things come
Yeah.
from random pieces of wood.
Ah,
So
So
yes,
like,
measure
more mature.
twice, cut once. That's the rule.
I like that this card actually says measure blank, as in it could be 7 or 8 times, right?
I like that because sometimes you forget. You put your pencil down. You can't find it 5 seconds later. And you have to measure it again.
Keep measuring. Measure one more time.
Right. Let me try this other tool. That didn't work. No, that wasn't right. And then you still cut it in the wrong spot.
That's
Now,
right. Take
I'm a
break.
huge fan of setting up a stop block, so I measured twice, cut like 20 times. I'm not sure how that fits. in this,
Oh,
but-
I like with a router or something.
yeah.
Can you tell us what a stop block is?
Oh,
So a stop block is basically a way of making the same size cut over and over and over without having to mark out every single one of those cuts. So if you're using a miter saw, which some people call a chop saw, where you just chop straight down with a blade that's spinning, you would, say, set up a block somewhere that you would butt your piece of wood up against, and then you would chop down, and then you'd take off the piece you care about and slide the rest in, chop at the same spot. So you can make a whole bunch of cuts all exactly the same length, not relying on you actually lining it up with your mark. Makes it a lot easier.
And you can buy those for like $20, or you can go to the scrap wood pile and get a free piece of wood
it's your chop
Right.
block.
and make your own.
Yeah, just screw it straight onto the table. Yeah.
Oh, you screw yours?
Every
I
once
clamp
in a while.
mine.
I usually clamp
Wing
mine,
it. Winging it.
but, you know, admittedly, sometimes I even just use a heavy piece, like a vise that's nice and heavy that's not going to move, and I just put it in the place that I want it to be so that I don't have to deal with any of the
Options. This is
clamping.
great.
But I have to be a little bit more careful sliding the wood in. So
Cool.
Making it your way.
Yeah. Hey, well, we have these signs in our space. What's that say? Something about.
You're not done until you've done certain things.
That's right. Until you've cleaned up, you gotta leave time to
Yes.
clean up.
yeah,
So
Absolutely.
we need to clean up our space here. I think a little bit. Our podcast.
It's time to wrap up and clean up.
Yeah, that's right. But we have to budget a little cleanup time, I guess. So I was thinking, anything coming up that you think, if you were listening to a podcast about Decatur makers, you'd want people to know about? I would say like Wednesday night,
We have our open build nights. kind of
7 to
our
9.
Open houses.
Mhm.
Come between 7 and 9. Bunch of our cool, awesome makers are here you can talk to. Get
Yeah.
a tour. Lou Lefton gives the best tour. Chris
Lou
Good's
gives-
pretty darn
they
good
give
too.
Good tours.
Really good tour. A little bit of history, a little bit about where we've been and how far we've come, and you can talk to some of our members about projects. And then if you have something that you want to work on, feel free to bring it in, and our folks will help you with it if they can.
Yeah.
it's when all the experts are around.
I was talking with Bill Sandy, who's sort of is our resident retired electrical engineer, right? And he and Chris Good are working. Well, I know he is working on another speaker build class, which I did a couple years ago, which is very cool. Where they talk about sound and the physics of speakers and design a speaker box and wire up the drivers. And so watch
You
for
walk
that
out
on
with
our meetup.
You walk out with a functional speaker.
You build your own speaker, like literally the box, and put the drivers
Electronics.
in, and yeah, you go home with your own speaker. So that was fascinating build, and my speakers sound great that I made. So
And we've got some
It is.
leather working classes coming up. We're adding some more of those. We've got an awesome member who does amazing leather working. A lot of cosplay type stuff, as well as functional things. So she
Cool.
teaches that class.
anything else? Shall we wrap it up? All right. Well, thanks to our audience for joining us, listening to us geek out over making stuff, and hopefully we'll see you again here at the Decatur Makers podcast.